Good afternoon and welcome to episode number 58 of My First Job, the podcast. We speak to people from different professions every week and talk to them about their career journeys and how they arrived at where they are today. It's an interesting mix of various professions. And what we've seen is that the internal story of any career can be far more layered than we see on the surface. Today, we have the privilege of talking to Malcolm Raphael. Malcolm has worn many hats. He's been in advertising, in marketing, in brand consultancy, and he has managed extremely large teams in his time at Bennett Coleman as part of the Times Group. One of the interesting things that I see about Malcolm is that he spent time in print at a time when digital was rising. And now that digital has stabilized to some extent, he's finding that he can add a lot more value by coming into an agency that provides a wide range of services. Hi, Malcolm. Great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming.
Hi Venu, absolute pleasure to be here.
Okay. So, the earlier thing used to be that people who were in advertising moved over to the client side. But you moved into media. Or should we go back? Why don't we start at the beginning where, uh, when you started off, what did you qualify in? How did you college and what did you do?
Yeah, so I actually did my English literature in graduation,
Wow.
and then I'm actually the youngest kid of six family of six.
Okay.
So I think by then five brothers and sisters before me had done MBA, and and
So you didn't
coincidentally,
want
I
to
think
follow. Okay.
so coincidentally most of them were in HR. But I
Okay.
was never, I think, destined to be in HR. I was more the dreamer in the family.
Okay.
Uh, so I think the eventual fallout, despite me studying literature, was to do an
Okay.
MBA. So that is when I came to Bombay. I mean, I did my graduation in Loyola College in Chennai, which is
Okay.
where I was born and brought up. Came
Right.
to Bombay to Narsi Monji, did my MBA there, and I think after that I just fell in love with the city. I think once you start working in Bombay, you just can't work anywhere else. I think the work
Why
ethic, the
is that, Malcolm? I've heard people who live in Bombay say it. Is it that the city is some kind of a drug, or is it that the pace of life is different from others?
no, actually, it's a lot of things. Yes, of course, the pace of the city and stuff like that. But I think it's the work ethic and professionalism that is displayed across the every single person in the city. I don't know how that has happened, but it's happened. So right from the help who comes to your house to work, right up to your CEO,
Right,
everybody follows a similar kind of work ethic. I mean,
right,
it's just amazing. So when you're in Bombay and you get used to this, so when an electrician says, "I will come and fix it," he will come and fix it.
right.
Whereas I've heard, I mean, in other cities, you'll just
Yeah.
you'll just be waiting, and especially in I don't know to name cities, but I've heard that हाँ हाँ आप फिक्र मत करो ये काम हो जाएगा and it
It
never
never
happens.
happens. Yeah,
But I
right.
think so once you get used to this kind of you know work ethic, it's very difficult to because I in fact after almost 3.5 years when I started in advertising, I moved to Chennai for about a year. I worked in an advertising agency there, which is where you and I met.
Yes, yes.
And
Fountainhead. Yeah.
yeah, and
Huh.
I mean, I couldn't. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the
Yeah.
work or the agency, but I just couldn't handle the work ethic. I mean, I was kind of missing the Bombay way of
Bombay all over
working.
again. But
Yeah.
which was your first job, Malcolm? What was your first job?
So my first job was actually with Madison.
Okay.
uh, and Madison at that time had a tie-up with DMBNB worldwide.
Okay.
So it was called Madison DMBNB. I think Denson, Bartley, Benton, and Bowles, if I'm
Right.
remembering it right.
Right.
So because of the tie-up, we had some very interesting clients, including Procter and Gamble. So
Okay.
I was very fortunate to start my career working on brands in Procter and Gamble,
So you
because I
started
think
in client servicing.
yeah, I started in client servicing.
Okay. And do you remember anything of the interview? What happened at that point? Because sometimes that's a blur. But in your case, what is it like?
No, honestly, I don't remember, but I remember meeting Sam Balsar at the interview, and he's
Okay.
another person you just instantly fall in love with.
Right.
uh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's such a amazing man, and in fact, I'm still fortunate to be in touch with him, and
Okay.
he
Okay.
invites me to his various functions and stuff.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Wonderful.
so I think it was just a great place to start one's career, both from a perspective of working in Procter and Gamble, because I don't think you can get a better grounding when you work with a great marketing company, either Procter or Unilever or any of the other, FMCG companies. So the whole process of, right from writing a brief to the whole research process to, I mean, I think during my 3 years there, we would have made, I don't know how many, 50, 60 films. Because
Okay.
before you made the final film, you had to do like some three quick and roughs, then you put it into research, testing, then whatever comes out, winner, then you produce the final film and stuff like that. So a lot of
Right.
action and learning here.
Right. Right.
And in fact, in those days, I mean, I feel old saying this, but you didn't have the comfort and privileges of what you have today, which digital and software has kind of revolutionized. If you
Exactly.
remember, we used to work with bromides
Yeah.
and acetates
Yeah.
and those kind of things, so you just
Right.
couldn't afford to make a mistake. And that is why I think today I can spot a typo from a mile away, because I've gone through the pain of having a typo, and then you have to get the either the bromide changed,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the studio manager gave you like grief,
Yeah.
and they had to cut the letter from some other bromide and stick it and stuff like that. I mean, that was a crazy process.
No, I'm sure that most of this, letter set and all that, the instant transfer which you had seemed like a big advancement on what used to be there earlier. But like you said, it's a sea change. And I say this often that today people look at type as something that drops down from a menu.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
saw it firsthand. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
that was a fantastic beginning to
Grounding.
my career. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then from Madison, what happened? How did you then
See,
move
so
on
I think,
to?
yeah. So after 3 years in Madison, and working in Procter, and I felt that I need to get exposed to some other clients and brands as well.
Right,
Uh, so I actually moved to another agency which I didn't like too much because I couldn't connect, with the ethic and stuff. And that is when
right,
I came to Chennai for a year,
right.
uh, because I was from Chennai and then missing home and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So I think even in Fountainhead, I got to work on Cabin Care and Ramco systems and very
right,
different kind of brands.
right.
But
The
I still
two
remember.
technology was just coming in, and on the side, Kevin Care was the old FMCG, or at least one of the few companies that was trying to get into FMCG from the south.
Yeah, yeah. In fact,
Yeah,
if you remember that Forever really,
yeah, yeah,
shook the pants of levers.
yeah. Exactly.
And in fact, that's another interesting story. I'll cover when we talk about my branding experience. How that actually made Fair and
Right.
Lovely do various things.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Terrific.
So in
Terrific.
fact, if you remember in Chennai, I still remember that film which we made on Nile shampoo,
Yeah.
where Amrita Rao was supposed to be a
The
ferry or
nymph.
something.
Yeah, the fairy in the forest. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
and the major struggles we had shooting that film. Uh,
Having to post produce in London just because you had to chroma key all the backgrounds.
yeah, correct. I
Yeah.
mean, today it would have been done in like, I think it would have been a much easier process.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. And then you went back to Bombay and
Yeah, so
after.
interestingly, yeah, so after Fountainhead, I got an offer from UTV Interactive. So
Okay.
at that time, in fact, Ronnie Screwvala, I believe, has always been ahead of the curve with whatever
Right.
he's done. So
Right.
he actually had a e-commerce site at that point of time. This I'm talking about what 2000
Yeah.
Uh, there was an e-commerce site called tsnshop.com,
Right.
and I joined them as brand manager.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and the CEO of UTV Interactive was again this amazing person called Biren Ghosh. I've been fortunate actually to have had amazing bosses throughout my career.
Right.
Uh, Biren Ghosh again became a good friend. We still in touch once in a way, and
Okay.
so tsnshop.com, it was almost like, and I think the main product we used to sell at that point of time was mobile phones, and that time mobile had just started, so it was mostly the Nokia, and I think maybe
But what
Motorola
are
was.
the challenges of doing e-commerce at that point? You didn't have payment systems. You didn't. There were not too many people going online. What were the things that you were trying to solve on a day-to-day basis?
See, I think at that point of time, since e-commerce was fairly new, digital buying digitally was fairly new. I think the challenge then was one, of course, to create awareness that you existed,
Yes.
and secondly, to tell people that hey, it is actually safe to shop digitally and stuff like that.
Okay.
In fact, I remember, and that is when the internet bubble was about to burst, and then Sam Balsara called me again and said, "What are you doing there? Come back to medicine." So, so then I went back to medicine for another 3 years to head servicing.
Okay. Okay.
And I
Okay.
still remember during that stint, uh, we had a bank at that time. There was this bank which had launched called Global Trust Bank.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges that banking faced at that time was actually so ATMs had just come in, and people
Hmm.
were like really scared to go and use ATM machines.
Right.
So there was a lot of communication. We did a lot of research trying to find out what is the huge challenge, and then creating communication to try and convince people to again say that ATMs are safe. You can go and I mean, it's when I think back, it's just amazing. And today, ATM is like, I mean, you can't live without an ATM, right?
Yeah, you can live without one. Yeah.
In fact,
But what were the kind of things? Yeah, people used to. So the problem that you were trying to solve is that they were afraid in the sense that they thought they'd lose money, or they were simply afraid to press buttons and then move things around.
see, banking at that time was, I think the international banks had just come in a few
Yeah.
years prior. So people were really used to going to a bank, speaking to a teller or speaking to somebody there, and which is what actually happens even now when you go to a
Right.
State Bank of India or whatever.
Right.
So in fact, a lot of older people and retired people, it's like
Prefer
an
that. Yeah.
appointment in their diary saying that, oh, I have to go to the bank every day. It's like an outing. So
Yeah.
suddenly imagine you're going into a room where there's a machine,
Yeah.
and that time ATM you could actually also deposit cash for a long time.
Right.
In fact, that was stopped only a few years back. So you
Okay.
really didn't know that, I insert this card and whether the card will get swallowed, and then, it's my hard earned money. What will happen? Will the money come out? And
Yeah.
if I put money in, will it actually go into my account? So there was a lot of questions. And I think as a nation, we've been fairly slow to adopt new technology.
Right.
In fact, if you see, COVID actually accelerated the whole adoption of
The
digital
whole
technology.
yeah adoption process.
In
Exactly.
fact, QR codes almost died and
Yeah.
suddenly got resurrected post COVID,
Right.
because
Right.
suddenly everything was happening digitally. You had to scan QR
Right.
codes. So it got a
Right.
second life. So I think that was the biggest challenge. It was more a mindset challenge than anything else.
Okay. Okay. So who were some of the other clients that you worked with? Are there things that you found strange in advertising at that level, or is it something that, okay, they were part of the normal process which you had to solve the day-to-day issues? Do you remember a particular campaign that you had to sell which was difficult, or anything of those?
Uh, I mean, actually, my memory is very, not very good as far as the details are concerned. But one thing I remember is that, at that point of time, advertising had some great quality people.
Yeah.
Uh, you had people from IIMs and IITs joining advertising. Uh, and there was advertising used to be so much fun.
Yes.
Uh, you know, like people used to say anything. People used to drink in office. We used to play games in office. In fact, uh, after 8 o'clock, even some bottles used to get opened, and because every day you were working till
Working
12,
pretty
1,
late.
2
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was such great fun, and you just didn't feel like it was a job, though you were
Work. Yeah.
really slogging your butt off every day. And
Right.
and today, when I think of the things that we did in those days, if you had to do it now,
Yeah.
you would have either got pulled up for whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there was no social media, so nothing came out on the net, and nothing stayed there.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the easier times. Okay, so Global Trust Bank was one of the large clients you worked with. Who were the other large clients of Madison that you were handling?
See, that time I think we had Godrej was a large client. Then we
Right,
had Tribondas Bimji Zaveri, the
right.
jeweler.
Yeah.
Then I mean there were lots of
How
other
was it
problems.
managing a jewelry client? Was it because this was more of a traditional jeweler as opposed to a Tanishq or some of the others which are big brands right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
So again,
TBZ was a very well-known brand. They've been around for a very long time, right?
yeah, yeah. So in fact, even Tanishq was just. I'm not sure if they had launched by then or they were just coming
Yeah,
in.
right.
So TBZ actually had a different challenge because there were, I think, one or two other TBZs which were started by his brothers or something like that. So so the biggest challenge that our communication challenge was to tell the world that this was the original TBZ.
Okay.
So, so,
There were
so in
too
fact,
many Me Too's, right?
so
Copycats.
I-
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I actually remember, we created a whole new identity for them, and it said
Okay.
TBZ the original, and
Okay.
we had done a fantastic campaign with Namrata Shirodkar, who was quite big at that
Right.
time.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, so it was great fun. In fact, Shrikant Bhai was a great guy to work with as a client. He
Right.
was a man
Right.
of few words, but he could say a lot of things by just looking at you and his expressions.
So he was evidently a great communicator because he
Yeah,
didn't have to use too many words to get across what he wanted to say.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
I think one thing that advertising at least taught me, you
Huh.
get to work with so many different kinds of clients,
Right.
and different age groups and different personalities. I think you get pretty good at able to understand people's verbal
Right.
and non-verbal communication.
Right, right. That's true. That's actually one of the biggest advantages that you have of working in advertising across the sector of clients. When you have a large base of clients who are in different industries, then
Yeah,
you really get to, yeah. Okay. So 3 years in Madison, and then what happened? How did
yeah.
was it? Yeah,
So this was the second stint in medicine.
yeah.
So then I think by then I was getting a little disillusioned with advertising,
Okay,
because things were changing, and like I said, I was always a dreamer and I love writing. So, I used to sometimes come up with some ideas and ads, which I don't think at that point of time, creative guys used to be very, open to it or whatever. So
Okay.
I somehow never understood or believed why creative should be the prerogative or the job of only a few people. I mean, an idea can come from anywhere. Uh,
Absolutely.
so I think that is something that was really bothering me. And also, I wanted to do something else. And then I still remember, out of the blue, this consultant calls me and he says, uh, there's this place called DMA Branding. Why
Hmm.
don't you go and meet them? I said, who
Okay.
the hell is who the hell is DMA Branding? I haven't even heard of them. What do they do? So he said,
Okay.
no, they do packaging and design and stuff like that. I said, I don't want to do packaging. I mean,
Okay.
after doing films and various
Yeah.
other things. So
Right.
actually, that guy was pretty persistent,
Okay.
and he said, "What are you going to lose? Meeting them." So
Right.
I said, "Yeah, that's a fair point. So let me go and meet." So then I went and met Sanjeev Malhotra, who was one of the founders of DMA Branding.
Okay.
And actually, if you ask me, I think that was one of the best decisions in my career
Okay.
because one, it suddenly opened my mind to say that advertising is not everything. There are
Right.
so many other aspects to building a
Branding.
brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes packaging can actually be a lot more difficult than creating an ad because when you're doing an ad, you have the advantage of visuals and a voice and emotions and stuff like that. But when a consumer is looking at your pack, the pack has to tell the entire story. uh,
Absolutely.
so that was very fascinating. And then of course, DMA, after I joined, we also got into corporate identity. In fact, I was part of the teams which redid the identity for Dabur from the old banyan tree to what it is now. We changed from Goodless Nerolac to Kansai Nerolac. In fact, we did the whole rebranding of Air India at that point of time. Air India
Okay.
Express. In
Right.
fact, I've even sat on multiple seats to help choose which seat should go into the aircraft. I mean, it was a fantastic experience. So the kind of width of stuff you got to do there,
Right.
and the other thing in DMA was, unlike advertising, where you got to work on only like two or three brands, here you got to work on like tons of brands because everything is a 3 month project. If it's a corporate identity, then of course it could be a 1 year or 2 year.
Right.
But otherwise, you got to work. So I got to work on relaunches of, right from Fair and Lovely to Pepsodent to Lifebuoy, Surf, ITC Foods. In fact, we were the ones who created Sunfeast as a brand. Then we did the entire brand architecture of how you
So give me
extend.
an instance. So Malcolm, you just said that packaging, people don't understand what is involved. So can you elaborate with respect to one brand so that, there's a sense of what goes in?
Elaborate on what goes into
On
packaging.
the packaging aspect, what is it that you were looking at when you did the packaging?
See, the packaging is finally, it's almost like a representation of your product, right?
Right.
So firstly, it has to represent the brand in terms of, right from the identity to the colors to the personality. So all that has to be taken care of, through the whole design aspect.
Yeah.
Second is the communication aspect, because you have to say all the key things on your pack that is also visible to the consumer, because the benefit has to come out, the ingredients has to come out both visually and verbally. uh, then the other thing is that was a time when we realized that uh, modern retail had picked up, so therefore people started interacting with the pack a lot more.
Mm.
So the role of back of pack started increasing. So
Increasing.
how do you then create a very interesting back of pack communication that, again, it wasn't just listing down nutritional facts. Like, for example, I still remember for Surf Excel, we've done a lovely back of pack which actually illustrated how you could use the detergent in a better way, and I think if it was for washing machines, then how do you use it, and various other things. So it was a very interesting aspect, and then finally you're playing only with so much of space.
Yeah, very
So
small spaces.
how
Yes.
do you yeah so how do you make use of every little space is available to you without the pack looking all cluttered and unaesthetic? So
And
I
if you
think,
look at it, it's the last mile, Malcolm, because if you're picking up a pack and you're reading that bit, that is the part which has got to convince you to finally make that purchase, which I
absolutely.
think is a terrific,
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah. See, also, I think packaging can also play a huge role in shifting your choice of brand at the last mile, especially
Yes.
when today loyalties are extremely, I would say, they're almost
Yeah.
absent.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I mean, one biscuit versus the other, or
Right.
one uh, fruit drink versus the other, as long
Yeah.
as both the brands are equally
Reasonably well known. Yeah.
well known, I don't think so. That's where packaging plays a huge role.
Right. Okay. So then in DMA, you were there for how long?
DMA, I think I was there for about 4.5 years. So
Okay.
I enjoyed doing a lot of corporate rejuvenation projects. In fact,
Right. Right.
Lotus Herbals was another brand that we
Yeah.
literally transformed. I mean, they were
Okay.
like, after we did the whole identity change and packaging change, the company just took off to another level.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No,
and what I was
just
telling you about,
huh?
sorry. So what I was telling you
No,
about
yeah.
Farever,
Huh.
because I happened to work on the Fair and Lovely varianting strategy. So
Okay.
what happened before
Huh.
Farever launched?
Huh.
Because Farever came up with the proposition saying we have natural ingredients, and I think they had
Right. Right.
little bit of saffron and I don't know,
Right.
something like that.
Right.
And they started taking away a good share of consumers from Fair and Lovely. So
Right.
that is when we realized that it's not a homogeneous set of consumers. There are different cluster of consumers wanting different kinds of benefits from the same kind of a cream. So
Okay.
my ultimate aim is to look fairer, but there are different aspects within that. So therefore, Fair and Lovely Ayurveda got launched
Right.
to counter Fairever. Then we did a
Right.
whole varianting strategy where there was Fair and Lovely for oily skin, there was Fair and Lovely for with dark spots, the Fair and Lovely
Right.
for all sorts of things.
Right.
So
Oh, so you worked on all those variants that they then those was the little barrage that was aimed at Forever, which had
yeah, yeah,
which was completely
yeah,
overwhelmed by the amount of work coming out of Unilever. Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Great. So that marked a different phase in your career because you moved from servicing a client to understanding packaging, going far more deeply into the foundational aspects of a brand, which I think very few people have that breadth of experience when they come in because they're either looking at the market or they're looking at the creative aspect, whereas you are beginning to see it from so many more perspectives. So, what
Yeah.
happened next?
No, so next what happened is I think by then I thought, you know what, I think it's time for me to start my own design agency. Uh,
Yeah.
which of course didn't happen. In hindsight, I don't know whether it was a good or bad thing, but
Okay.
for whatever reasons, I didn't have the gumption at
Pursue
that
that.
time to do
Okay.
it. Then,
Okay.
like any advertising guy, you want to be on the client side, and
Yeah.
so then I got an opportunity to work with United Spirits in
Okay.
Bangalore, and so I joined United Spirits. I think I was there for little less than 2 years.
Okay.
So I was the category head for vodkas and also for signature whiskey.
Okay. Okay.
But the problem there was, you could hardly do any ATL advertising because it's a dark market. So a lot
Right.
of stuff that we did was all BTL. So beyond a
Yes.
point, there's only so much of bar activations and stuff. Uh, and, you know, this,
And so many campaigns camouflaged as something else. How many things do you call it? From water to playing cards to God
no,
knows how many
in
things.
fact, that time the rules were so strict that we couldn't even do that.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Okay.
in fact, we shot one film which never saw the light of day. It was a
Oh,
fantastic film, actually.
okay.
Yeah, so I was getting a little frustrated. Also, having worked in advertising and branding and handling so many brands at the same time, uh, it kind of got boring to handle just 3 4 brands. So that is
Right.
when in fact, CVL Srinivas called me out of the blue. I knew him
Okay.
from before because of some common friends, and so he's the WPP country head right now.
Okay.
So then I was telling him, hey, do you know of any opportunities? I'm kind of getting bored here. So he was the one who pointed me towards Times. So Times at that point had a strategic investment arm. I mean, they still do, and it was called Times Private Treaties.
Right.
So then I came to Bombay, met with Mr. Shivakumar, who was the CEO of Times Private Treaties. And then I joined Private Treaties. It was such an interesting concept uh, because here was a media company who was helping brands and businesses overcome the barrier of advertising expenses
Right.
uh, by taking equity in exchange for advertising currency. So it
Yes.
actually solved for resolving the conundrum between, do I build my business or do I build my brand, when you actually had to
Absolutely.
build both at the same time. And many businesses can't afford brand building, at the same time. So that
In their
is,
early stage, especially.
yeah,
I
especially
just
in the
want
early
to check with you, Malcolm. Is there an equivalent model anywhere else, or was this unique to Bennett Coleman
It
Times?
was unique. It was unique to Bennett Coleman.
No model like this exists anywhere else in the. Not that
No,
you.
no.
Wow, that's
In fact,
amazing because it seems like something you can actually do, right? I have a network, I have circulation, I have the properties which have been around for ages, and yet this is something that it's amazing. So, how do you go about building it?
yeah, so I think this was, a really genius idea from Mr. Samir Jain.
Okay.
And it actually came from a difficult point of saying, because at that time itself, people were saying print is going to die. So
Yes.
the fact that, people have been saying print is going to die for the last 20 years. So,
And today, the largest advertisers are Amazon and Google.
yeah, exactly.
Not print. Yeah. Okay.
So, so this actually was created to uh, prolong the sunset of print. So,
Okay.
so basically, so on one hand, it helped the businesses because you came in and infused advertising money, so to speak.
Right. Right.
And on the other hand, because you got these guys to advertise on your paper, the vibrancy of your newspaper also was that much
Absolutely.
better.
Absolutely.
So it
So
kind of,
take me through one or two memorable instances as to, what was the thing that startups would probably, what were their issues, or how did you convince them, or they didn't need much convincing?
no, actually, some of them, needed convincing. We used to, so in fact, so when I joined Times Private Treaties, I had like 2 3 mandates. One was obviously to manage the brand itself. And in fact, I was the one who worked on the whole repositioning of Times Private Treaties to brand capital,
Okay.
which
Well,
is
that's a
what it is.
lovely name because that's really what you're giving. As
Yeah,
opposed to money capital, you're giving capital to build your brand, which is an amazing thought.
correct. So, and the other mandate I had was to actually help all portfolio companies in the process of building their brand. So what happened is most of them were not large companies and therefore didn't have the advantage of having great marketing guys in house. So
Right.
we almost became the extended marketing arm for them.
Okay.
So I remember we used to help, a lot of these companies, help them identify agencies. We used to be part of the agency campaign presentations, help them decide which campaign to go with. And in many cases, thanks to my, you know,
Advertising experience.
advertising experience and branding experience, and also my love for writing, I started writing campaigns myself. So at least here, there was no creative director to stop me from writing.
So you fulfilled the long cherished dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So in
Okay.
fact, I wrote a lot of campaigns. Some of them did much better than what agencies had done.
Give me one of the campaigns that you did. What did you remember?
One of them was for Aegon Insurance, I think. Uh, they were struggling. Their campaigns were not working, and then I did something which really, I think, increased their call rate by some 30-35%. So
Okay.
there were many of these. I mean, it's been a while.
Okay.
So yeah. So and the other thing we used to do is we used to help the BD teams to create pitch presentations to convince. See, essentially, most of these entrepreneurs uh, understood their business well, but didn't understand the branding and marketing aspect of
Right.
the business.
Which continues to this day. People think that it's just making ads.
Yeah,
Somehow they don't understand what is involved. Like you said, packaging, there are so many aspects that it's very few who understand what is involved.
yeah, absolutely. So then we used to actually help them, see how the whole thing is going to progress. We used to tell them that in this category, this is the kind of advertising budgets that you will require, because our presentation kind of became the benchmark or the context to help decide what size of deal that client should be looking at over a period of 3 to 5 years. Uh,
Okay.
so all that became part of my team's deliverable. So
So
it was
this was a combination of you would get equity or you would get money in return. How was it structured? It would depend.
no, so till 2008, before the crash happened, it used to be only equity, which
Okay.
means if you had a company and I valued your company at 100 crores,
Right.
and I said that what, you needed 10 crores of advertising,
Right.
then I would get 10% equity.
And you
But
would
then,
give 10 crores of space in the Times publications.
yeah, and it was across the Times Group at that time. So
Okay. Okay.
print, radio, television, whatever
Whatever.
digital
And
properties, etc.
depending on whatever, but it would be within the Times group because
Yeah,
obviously that was what you were trying to leverage.
within the Times Group. Yeah,
Very smart strategy. Yeah.
yeah.
Though I'm sure the other media houses must have,
So later,
must have, uh,
later post the 2008 global crash and stuff like that, we changed the model to 65-35.
okay.
uh, so in the same scenario, I would give you 10 crores of advertising, but take only 6.5 crores worth of equity,
Okay.
and as you advertise, you would pay 35% in cash, and the 65% would get adjusted against the equity holding that I have.
Okay. Okay.
So that also kind of reduced the hit on your cash flows,
Right.
and
Right.
still allowed you to advertise.
Right. So has that model kind of stabilized now? Do you think that it's a long-term thing, or do you feel, and how does it impact the editorial? How did, all of these things that obviously has an effect, but how do you manage the internal contradictions?
No. So in fact, the reason why we changed the name from Times Private Treaties to Brand Capital was also one of, because a lot of people used to write saying, what is this treaty and why is it private and all sorts of things. And I think, and Venu, this is a huge misperception that there is any editorial pressure or editorial,
Yeah.
favorable outlook towards these companies. In fact, we used to face the reverse.
Okay.
And we always maintained a Chinese wall
All between these two. Yeah.
between brand capital and editorial, or even between my latest stint with the response, which is the revenue function.
Okay.
Because if you don't have a Chinese wall, then it becomes very very
Very
difficult to.
difficult. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. But it's a fascinating study of how to fight back, because like you said, when you came in, print was supposed to be, so there were campaigns which said print is not dying, which is actually not. There is no point in telling people that print will survive. You have to show them a way, and I think time showed one of the ways, though it may have had its opposition. At the
Yeah,
end of the day, I think they did something which is very different from what the other media houses in the country did, right?
yeah. So in fact, I'm very proud to tell you that after 2008 I joined. I think around 2013 I came up with a new business model idea within Brand Capital,
Okay.
and it was called Brand Scope.
Okay.
So what I did is, again, thanks to
Huh.
my branding experience and stuff. So one
Huh.
day I thought of a brand name,
Okay.
told my creative team to create a logo for it,
Right.
then created a mock ad, and then I
Okay.
went and showed it to my CEO and said, "Have you seen this brand before?"
Okay.
So he said no. I said, "Do
Huh.
you think where it's from?" So he said,
Huh.
it looks very European. I
Okay.
said, I said, I created it on the fourth floor. He said, "Wow, what are you saying?"
Okay.
So then I told him the idea, and I said, "See, we are helping other brands and businesses, uh, build their businesses by leveraging the power of our media."
Okay.
now the now the strength of print is not going to last forever.
Right.
So why don't we leverage the same power of our media to create our own consumer brands which will outlast print?
Okay. Okay.
So then
Great idea.
he said, "Great
Huh.
idea. Why don't you go ahead?" So then I came up with almost 8 different brand names, created brand books for each, envisaged which categories they would reside in. We registered those each of those brands in those category in multiple trademark classes. So it
Which
was
ones
a
are these? Okay.
so this was a reverse of marketing, conventional marketing,
Right.
because we created the brand first and then went out to seek entrepreneurs who could do products, content, and experiences. So we
Okay.
managed to launch 3 brands. One was
Okay.
a youth brand called Stray Dog.
Okay.
Then there was another brand targeted to tweens called Doodlers. So the
Okay.
whole philosophy of that brand was around doodling.
Okay.
And the third one was called Native Heart, which was in the conscious living space. So all about natural products and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
then then I think I did that for 3 years, and then I moved into Response, which is the revenue division, and then I think this model slowly died out. So,
Okay. Okay. But it's a very interesting thought to say that, okay, what happens when you actually put the cart before the horse? In most of the cases, you're searching for a market, and then you say, no,
yeah, yeah.
there is a cohort of people who is interested, and can we build something around them? Yeah.
In fact, it created a lot of excitement in the market because whoever we met, you know, because when you have the manufacturing capability, and you're creating a commodity, and then somebody
Yeah.
says, "You know what, I can actually come and take your product and make it into this fancy brand which is ready made,
Right. Right.
and I have the power to build it like rapidly."
Right.
So
Right.
then suddenly everything, pricing goes up, your commodity becomes a brand, it becomes a premium product, etc. So I think it was a fantastic idea. I think we
Yeah.
struggled with the model, the financial aspect of it for a while, and then eventually, for
Okay.
whatever reason, it kind of died down.
Yeah, but like you said, once it's out there in the market, then there is always a way in which you can either revive it at a certain time or at a certain, within a
Yeah.
certain context. That is always possible. Okay. So, was this 15 years at, Bennett Coleman by this time, or was it about 8, 9 years? How many years did you spend there? You spent quite a bit
No,
of
no,
time, right?
totally. Yeah, yeah. So I when I put in my papers in October 2023, I had completed 15 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. No, no, but
That's your heart.
it was a fantastic journey. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely no regrets. I learned a lot. I learned the
Yeah.
whole investing space, thanks to brand capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look,
And
looking at
that I
new.
think is really so, Malcolm. The amazing part is that you didn't just look at most people. The career journey is within marketing, and then I rise to the top, and then within a certain category or a certain broad category. Or if you get into CEO, then maybe managing the company. But you've retained that aspect of working across several sectors, and then exploring business models while staying within the enterprise, which is, I think, quite unique.
Yeah,
So,
I think I was fortunate to fall into these jobs.
yeah, yeah, that's an amazing bit of this thing. So, if you were to look back at some of the things that you did, do you see luck played a role? There was chance, and I this is something that I believe I uh, should explore with my guests, which is the role of luck, skill, and the times. Times as in the times you're in. How much of this is interrelated, and do you think there is an interplay between these three factors in a career?
See, I think luck is overrated.
Okay,
But I would say that I've been very lucky, or luck has played a huge role from two aspects. One is in the kind of bosses I've had throughout my journey.
right.
Because I've heard, and there is that phrase that you join an organization
Yeah,
but you leave because of the boss.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I've been really fortunate to have amazing bosses throughout my career. Uh,
Wonderful.
so, so that is, I think, that's where luck has played. And
One
secondly,
aspect
I
of it.
think the other aspect where luck has played is possibly where uh, people have reached out for whatever reason, or that connection has happened at the right time.
Yeah,
And when you look
yeah.
back, it's possibly, it's like destiny. Like, for example, when I came back to Chennai, that was more because of frustration and compulsion. uh, I happened to meet my wife.
Yeah.
So that one year I came to Chennai, I happened to meet Anna, and so
So
sometimes you really
Chennai
want
paid
to.
so the Chennai move really paid off that way for lifelong.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but I think there is no compromise to skill and hard work. There's no substitute,
Right.
and
Right.
I think you know constantly evolving on your skill set, keeping an open mind to continuously learn. Because I mean, believe me, when I joined Times, brand capital, for a few months I was clueless because everyone was a finance guy around me. The
Okay.
entire team was people from P backgrounds and finance backgrounds. So I had to really spend a lot of time with them, and then also reading up, saying, understanding this whole investment space.
Okay.
And it wasn't also the typical investment space. So actually understanding it from saying the role of advertising and brand building from an investment space. So
So well put. Yeah. That's absolutely the key. And as an outsider, which is that you have the media, and the media is one aspect of brand building, but you have to figure out how important that is and give it the weightage that it requires at that point.
correct, because you brand capital would not have been successful if you looked at it only from a finance perspective, or you looked at it only
Yes.
from a brand perspective.
Exactly. It had to have a mix of both working
Yeah,
simultaneously.
yeah.
Okay. So we've spent quite some time discussing the brand aspect. So you've just joined this new company. So why don't you tell us what Sideways is all about?
Yeah, so Sideways is actually, very interesting company. I've been kind of following it because I know Abhijit Avasti personally as well, much before, joining Sideways. And I used to constantly, hear about interesting things they're doing. They used to create toys for somebody, they created word games for someone else. And then whenever I used to meet him and we used to chat, he used to say that we have such an eclectic team. So they
Mm.
have strategic planners to technocrats to UI UX designers to branding people to creative and advertising. So I think there's a huge difference between sideways consulting and an advertising agency is that you go to them with a brand or a business problem, and the end solution doesn't necessarily have to be an ad.
Okay. That's a
It
great
can
way of
be
putting it. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
solution can be anywhere. It could be a HR solution, it could be a distribution solution, it could be a technical solution. So the solution can be anywhere,
Okay.
and I think that's the difference, and that is, I think, where the future has to be.
Right.
Because today the problem is advertising agencies just look at any problem and say, "Acha,
I
let me
mean,
create a 30-second
ad.
commercial." Now it's become 6 seconds and 10 seconds, but you know.
So true.
So I think Sideways occupies a very sweet spot between the big four and advertising agencies, and I
Okay.
think I think at least the role that I've defined in my head for myself is that how do you kind of grow this spot and cement this spot and make clients and brands understand the difference and the importance of looking at your business and brand from all aspects.
All aspects. Yeah. I haven't seen too many CXOs in the chief growth space. So is that unique as well?
No, so in fact, it seems to be like a emerging role, and I realized some couple of friends from the US said, "Hey, you know what? Even I'm a chief growth officer." Then,
Okay.
then I saw a couple of profiles. People in Meta also, having that
Looking at,
uh,
yeah.
kind of it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's a new kind of a CXO role which has come up in the last few years.
Okay. So do you see a difference, Malcolm, between um, how does it overlap and how is it different from business development alone?
See, business development, I think, is, you know, I'm not a business development guy.
Okay.
Uh, so it's not going to be the typical, hunting for new business and stuff like that. I think
Right.
uh, I would say that this role is about having those conversations with clients and entrepreneurs and, a lot of business owners in understanding what their problem is and what their challenges are. Sometimes even they might not be able to articulate the challenge,
Articulate that clearly. Okay.
you know.
Okay.
So how you, it's almost like the homeopath, right? The homeopath identifies your
Diagnose.
problem, the
Yeah.
diagnosis by asking
Yeah.
you various questions or just listening to you speak.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that is where homeopath scores above allopathy.
Yeah.
So I think that's the I think that is going to be the approach towards my role, where you have
Okay.
these conversations and then discover what is it that can be done, because the array of solutions that Sideways is able to offer is, I mean, is
Is
a huge
amazing.
spectrum. Yeah,
Yeah. Because you're really not confining yourself to just a medium or a certain approach, but
correct,
you're saying that we will see what the brand requires. Okay. So for
absolutely.
people entering the business, to conclude what has been a marvelous session, because I think I really enjoyed understanding what you've been doing. Uh, what would you tell people who are just entering the business, or what is it that young people today should look for?
I think one is definitely have the right attitude,
Okay.
because I've seen that I don't know what's wrong with today's generation. I mean, they come with some crazy attitude. So if you're not willing to put in the hard work in the beginning of your career, put in the time. I mean, it's not going to hold you in good stead going forward.
Yeah.
So I think this whole thing of saying, oh, I want to earn the big bucks in the quickest time. Yeah, some of them might do. You might come up with a startup company, or land a great job.
Yeah.
But that will be just the 5%. But I think
Right.
95% has to go through the paces of putting that hard work, having the right attitude, and sticking to what you're doing, building your skill set, and
Yeah.
yeah, going the whole hog.
And even the 5% that you spoke about, they might get, it's like getting the whole thing upfront. They spend the rest of their life validating and justifying it, hopefully. It's not as
Yeah, yeah.
just
See
because you get that money in the beginning, everything else will happen. It won't.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I've also seen, over my career is that your pedigree will get you in the first one or two doors.
Yeah.
After
After
that
that,
it's your
yeah, it's
reputation
your
and
ability that,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Terrific. So thank you so much, Malcolm. It's been wonderful talking to you.
I should
And
thank you, Venu, for inviting me on this. Yeah, I mean, you triggered a lot of nostalgia. In fact, some of the stuff I said, I didn't haven't thought of it in a long time.
which is really what I want this to be. I want this to be a career journey that you have traversed, and something that you can itself, you can look back and see how things have changed from the person you were to the person you are today. So, and I want young people who come in to look at this and then say, okay, so this is how it all works out. There are good and bad parts, there are successes, there are failures, but at the end of it, you have a realization. Okay. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much for coming on the show, and all the best for your time at Sideways and
Thank you so much.
whatever
Thank you
else
so
that
much
you
for having
do
me.
in future.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay. So that was Malcolm Raphael speaking to us as the Chief Growth Officer of Sideways. This has been a conversation that covered several emerging trends. So I hope you find it useful. Next week, we'll be back with another guest, another story. Do join us again then. Thank you, as always, for listening.